Okay, I hope you're all still hanging with me. I know we're building a lot of things that we really can't see the outcomes of yet, but just bear with me, we're almost to the good part. So this video is all about connections. And connections is a fairly new feature that Cabinet Vision added back in Cabinet Vision 12. It really added a lot more customization and flexibility through the construction method itself. It used to be that anything abnormal you wanted to do, you would have to have a UCS or some kind of formula to be able to accomplish it, but connections really expanded what you're able to do. So let's get into it. So just like always, first thing I want to do is clean things up a little bit because we want to see things how we put them in there. So there's two dados here that I'm not going to be using. I think this comes with one of the drawer boxes. And the nice thing is, if I right click and delete this, it says, are you sure? Yes. It'll actually tell me where it's at, and then it gives me the opportunity to replace it. This is really nice. Say you set a bunch of things up and went and chose that connection throughout your entire construction method. If you wanted to replace it, they give you a very nice way to do that. So you won't need this a lot, but it's really helpful to know that that's in place, which I'm okay with just directly removing these because I don't have a replacement for it. I just don't want this dado. So here it's on the Bloom Tandem Drawer Box Constructions, which we're going to build our own anyways, so that's fine. Let's clean up and name these things how we want to name them. First thing, let's get into dados. There's a couple different kinds of dados. There's stop dados, blind dados, and through dados. Blind dados is kind of a category of its own, but stop and through dados are very similar. Most times, I'm going to say 90 to 95% of the time, you're going to want a stop dado. Because what a stop dado means, like say you have a drawer stretcher that's 4 inches wide. If you put a stop dado on that drawer stretcher, it'll make a dado that's 4 inches. If you put a through dado on the drawer stretcher, it would go front to back of the whole left end and the whole right end. So through dado, there is places for it, but very rare, because most times you want the dado to only be as big as the part that it originated from. So hopefully that kind of summarized a little bit the difference between those two. Okay, so let's get into the way I like to name things. When we're choosing them in the construction method, the list sorts alphabetically. So what I like to do is, say for example, this 1/4 inch stop dado. I like to put the main category first, so dado, and then I use a period kind of as my separator. So I'll put dado dot stop dot 1/4 inch deep. And the nice thing is, if I need more information, I can just keep adding dots. And what that does is it makes a really nice alphabetical sort, because it's kind of like category, subcategory, subcategory, and it can go as much as it needs to. So let's do the same thing on this one. This is a 3/8 stop dado. And then let's do the same thing on the through dado. So it'd be dado dot through instead of stop. And then I think, was this 3/8? I forget. If we forget, we can always click into it and it opens this little wizard. So this is a through dado and it's 1/4 inch. So I was wrong there. Okay, so now at this point, if you're new to Cabinet Vision, you're probably like, what are connections? What am I looking at here? So again, keep in mind, we're still in the building pieces part of things. And so what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to build several pieces that I think are going to be useful in the construction method. So obviously I know I want stop dados. Those are pretty useful no matter what kind of construction you build. You want a couple in your library. Through dados I'll probably build out as well, just so I have them in here. And then we might get into a couple other special ones. But basically, connections are any way that the part connects to another part. This could be a regular dado, it could be dowel construction, it could be cabinos, ovo connectors, qualified blind tenons. There's a lot of different ways of connecting parts in a cabinet. We're not going to get to all of them, but what I want to do is add enough examples that you kind of get an idea how and go about things. And then as we get into building our construction method, we might come back and forth and add more as we need them. The top two here, let's clean this out a little bit. This is like for dowel construction right here. It's putting edge boring and then vertical boring in the CNC, but we can always add this back if we want to do dowels. So I'm going to delete these. It's currently being used on frameless. It's fine. And again, this is where a lot of people are a little nervous about deleting things, but that would just confuse you forever if you left it in there. We want a nice clean list. And you'll see when we get into the next video, when we start going through our construction method, that clean list is very important because we're going to be using that connections dropdown a lot. Okay, now we have to decide how we want to do our hose. What I like to do, and what I'm going to do in the case of this video, is we're only going to bore 5 holes per shelf. You can also, Cabinet Vision has the ability to do the bore by opening or bore by cabinet. I'm a fan of the bore required hose, so that's what I'm going to focus on in this initial setup. And we'll talk more about the hole boring later in the video if you're going to be doing different types. So this is what I'm going to treat as my main one. So similar, I want to say line bore dot 5 hose. And then I want to delete the others. All of these can go away. And again, keep in mind, super easy to add back if we change our mind. So it's not like, oh no, I shouldn't have deleted that. We can just get it right back if we change our mind. Okay, so now we have a few dados and our line bore. So what I want to do is I want to build out an 1/8, 1/4, and 3/8 of each type of dado, like for a stop and through. Just because those are pretty common and I like to have these in my library regardless what construction you're building. So I'll copy the 1/4 inch and then just double click in it and go change the settings. Leave it on stop obviously, but change the depth to 1/8 inch. And then we're going to ignore the adjustments. If you're cutting on a CNC, I would recommend, adding like 0.005 to the depth just to make sure the dado fits. But for right now, we're going to leave them all on 0. The nice thing about connections is, for all your dados, you can come in and update a few things instead of going through 1,000 questions in all your different construction methods. These column headings are sortable. So when you first come into connections, you'll see that it kind of just sorts by ID, which is dumb, but just click on name. And then it will put them in the right order. And there you can kind of see the reason I organize them the way I do, because it groups them together. So let's add an 1/8 and a 3/8 through dado. So I'll just highlight the through dado and copy it. And again, like I said, even whether you do frame or frameless, I would recommend going ahead and putting these in here because these are just handy to have. Let's go ahead and do a 3/8. And then choose the settings. Okay, now with the descriptions, now that I have my dados and my line bore, I like to put kind of the main level category in the description over here. And this just makes a quick glance to kind of see what's happening. So now let's think about what else we would want to add. Let's do a blind tenon because with this pro path taking you through here, we're going to be doing frameless cabinets. And so I'm going to put a qualified blind tenon on these cabinets as an example. And then in future videos, we'll talk about the different types of connections such as dowels or cabineos or other connectors. So I'm going to say dado.qualifiedblind.large parts, just large. Okay, and we'll call it a dado. Here, just give it a name. The type. Again, we're just going to leave it on dado for right now, but there you can kind of see some of the different types that are available. And I'll put it on blind, and we're going to say it is 3/8 deep. Do you want to qualify it? You can see it on the image. So yes, we want to qualify the blind dado. And then how much do we want to qualify it? I'm going to do 3/8. And I'm just going through putting in some settings just so you have an example to follow. This doesn't mean this is the right way for you. So how much do you want to notch the front? I'm going to say 2 inches. And do you use a rear notch? Yes. I'm going to say 2 inches back here as well. And then here's those dado width adjustments again that we're going to leave blank for now. And now you might be wondering why I put large in here. And the reason being is like on a bottom or a top or a fixed shelf, I'm okay with it being 2 inches from the end. But if I have something like a drawer stretcher or a nailer, I might want to get a little closer, like 1 inch, because the part may only be 3 or 4 inches wide. And so I like to do large and small. And I do this same strategy whether I'm doing a qualified blind dado or dowels or cabineos. I like to do this large and small. Anytime I get into connectors that have spacing involved. Okay, even if you want to leave the settings totally the same, I would still separate it, because if you change your mind and want to adjust it, you'd have to go back through your construction method and go through a lot of questions, whereas if you split it to start with, now you have individual control of. So I'm going to do 1.5 inches on the front and 1 inch on the back on these small parts. Okay, cool. Now, let's say we also want to pre-drill, kind of put a little 5mm hole as long as it's an unfinished edge. So I don't have to worry about actually telling it when to pre-drill. I just need to set up a connection for those type of holes. So I'm going to call it pre-drill dot large. So I'm gonna do the same large and small thing that I did with the qualified blind dados. And this time I'm gonna do boring and enter the diameter of the primary hose. I'm gonna say 0 because I don't actually want edge boring. You have to have a fancy machine for that. But on the secondary hose, the ones that can be cut on a CNC router, I'm gonna switch to millimeter. You can just click that little button there, and then I'll type in 5 millimeters. And then we want it to be a through hoe, yes, centered on thickness. And then we want front and rear hose. Let's say 1 hoe at the front, and I want it to be 2 inches from the front. And I'm gonna say 1 hoe at the back, 2 inches from the back. And then let's say every 5 inches. Okay, now I'm clicking through a lot of screens and we're covering a lot of things, but I promise, just bear with me here, and in the next video when we go into our cabinet construction, you're going to start seeing what these mean, because I'm going to be switching back and forth and seeing where this is mapping. So hang in there. So we got our pre-drill for large parts. Now let's do pre-drill for small parts. And we don't need edge boring, so I'm going to leave those diameters and depths on 0. And then all these settings can be the same, except I'm just going to match the spacing to the same as I did on the qualified blind dado. Okay, cool. So now we have a nice little library. We can choose from several different kinds of stop dados, through dados. We have our line bore connection that tells us to always drill 5 hose with a shelf. And then we have our qualified blind dado, and we have our pre-drill hose. So I'm going to stop there with that video, but then even in the next videos as we're going through the construction method, we're still going to be referencing more of this connection manager. So this was a very quick introduction. So there's going to be more to come on connections.